I welcome all of you aspirants to this, topper strategy session. Here we are with Tanay. So first of all, congratulations, Tanay, for this great achievement.
Thank you so much.
Tanay, if you can just tell me in brief that how was your journey with respect to RBI Grade B preparation that leads to this great achievement that you've achieved?
It was a mix of everything. I had my successes, I had my strengths, weaknesses. In fact, this is my second attempt. And last year, in my
Mhm.
first attempt itself, just after graduating, I actually made it to the interview stage, at which point I found out that I was late in my graduation for 8 days, by 8 days. So I was not allowed to take the interview. So that was a particularly low
Okay.
point for me. After that, I gathered my
Mhm.
strength and set on this path again. And here I am this time, by the grace of the gods and my parents, etc. And I have cleared this examination.
Okay, wonderful. So you mentioned that when you were not allowed to give interview over there, so that was a very low point. So how did you recuperate yourself, and how did you kept yourself motivated at that time? Because a lot of students face failure in this whole journey, and any experiences you would want to share in this regard?
Yeah, sure. So actually, I was particularly confident in that attempt as well. And finally, I found out that I had scored 20 marks above the cutoff in my phase two in the previous attempt as well. So getting a shock like this, not being allowed to take the interview on such technical grounds was definitely very, very demotivating for me. And I sort of mourned it for a couple of weeks or so, and after that I set on the preparation path again, and believing that the destiny actually favors those who have the potential and who are able to work hard for it and be persistent and consistent with their efforts.
Definitely wonderful answer. So basically, now we'll start about the preparation in general. So initially, let's talk, and we'll talk phase wise. So first of all, with respect to first phase, and you're already aware, and since you've cleared phase one, phase two in both the journey, so anything you want to tell with respect to how did you approach phase one? Because it consists of QRE and GA. First, we'll stick to QRE. How did you approach QRE?
So, in my opinion, phase one is all about playing to your strength, especially when clearing the overall cutoff is concerned. Of course, you need to be reasonably proficient in all the subjects to actually clear the sectional cutoff. And as you can see, even that is getting tougher year by year. But QRE was actually my strength as far as phase one exam was concerned, since I come from an engineering background. Mathematics and reasoning is something that I have dealt with my whole life. So I just attempted a couple of mock tests even before starting with the subjects, and I found out that I was reasonably good with the subjects, and QRE was itself enough to carry me very close to the overall cutoff. And even when it came to English, since I was I was participating in debating, speaking, writing, etc. during college, even English was not a problem for me. So here I would like to mention that English is actually the low-hanging fruit as far as phase one is concerned. One can easily target 25 or so marks in English, and that would significantly ease off the burden as far as clearing the overall cutoff is concerned. When it comes to quant and reasoning, there are particular topics, even in quant and reasoning, that can be done within a short span of time, and the questions can be highly rewarding in exam. For example, blood relations, direction, sense. These are some of the topics that can be easily done, and the questions can be handpicked in the examination so as to get maximum reward for your efforts.
So with respect to, phase one, as all of you, and you've already understood that, because we have sectional timings in it, as, in contradiction to other examinations where we have composite time, where you have, you can distribute time according to your strength. So time, all sectional timing creates a huge amount of pressure on a lot of candidates, especially when they are not able to answer one or two questions and they get more pressure. So how did you maintain your composure in those time periods?
While there is sectional timing, one must also understand that very few questions need to be attempted correctly to get through the sectional cutoff. So if quant and reasoning is not your strength, it is best to skim through the paper very quickly and find out those questions which can probably be solved within 2 or 3 minutes and target those questions. After solving those, one can go to the more difficult sections, especially when it comes to sections like DI in quant or puzzles in reasoning. Those are very risky in terms of making an attempt, because they generally take 10 or so minutes and may not pay you in case you are not able to crack the code in those questions. So one should, in my opinion, target easy chapters and standalone questions out of those topics which can be solved, and after making an attempt of 5 to 6 or 7 easy questions, then you should go for the questions that are remaining as per one's strengths.
So with respect to, mocks or normal tests, how did you approach or, mocks for phase one? Because some people prefer sectional test, then they try to attempt full mock test. So what was your approach? What did you do in this context in your preparation?
I always attempted full-length tests because there was no particular section in which I was so weak that I needed sectional mocks to actually boost up my preparation. So I always did full mocks, also because it helped me analyze the weaknesses in an exam-like setting, because in an exam that spans over 2 hours, it can be mentally exhausting to actually attempt question after question, especially in the later sections. So I always did full mocks, and something that I particularly focused on was the analysis after solving those papers. I analyzed those questions which were doable on my part based on my skills, but either I made it wrong during the examination or I was not able to attempt. And those questions, the particular mistakes or omissions that I made, I wrote it down separately in a notebook and made a repository of my mistakes, and kept on looking at it before giving further mocks, so that those mistakes would not be repeated. And before the exam, I had a whole 10-pager kind of list of all the possible mistakes that I could commit, and I looked at those and tried to avoid them in the final examination. And I hope that that actually paid off.
Yes, definitely. Your approach is very much right, because no, it is very much essential that you analyze your mocks. Otherwise, mocks won't do anything good. And second most important thing that you mentioned was that we should have some strategy with respect to our choice of questions whenever we go to QRE. And at least with some sense of direction, we'll not be faced by, or we'll not be panicked by the time pressure. Wonderful. So now we'll come to GA. So as you know, GA is very vast, and it's constantly evolving also. So nobody is aware of that the sources are obviously very much huge and diverse as well. So how did you approach GA?
So GA was something that was not only new to an engineer like me, but also difficult to cover. So I made it a point to never follow primary sources. For example, reports, budget, economic surveys, or newspaper. I never followed the primary sources, and I read the information that was distilled and filtered by various institutes in their compilations. So for GA, I covered 5 months of current affairs, because that was the most that I could comfortably cover with the time that I had. And I practiced MCQs based on those to have a visual recognition so as to be able to recognize the data and pattern when I see them on the screen during the course of the examination, and hopefully attempt most of those.
So if we have, so mostly you try to follow compilations in general. And with respect to sources, what do you think? What kind of different sources if one should do, especially someone who is coming from engineering background, who's not, always into it. What kind of sources that they should focus upon in terms of official sources? I'm just asking you.
So I think PIB is very important.
Mhm.
Government scheme, a compilation of schemes, those not only that have been in the news in the past 6 months or so, but also flagship and important schemes related to those different ministries should be done. Budget and economic survey are a must do, as are reports. There are some reports that are mentioned in the syllabus itself, like
Yes.
RBI's report on currency and finance, RBI annual report, financial stability report, World Development Report by World Bank, and other such reports. Those should be done thoroughly, both from objective and descriptive point of view. Apart from that, RBI and SEBI circulars, especially I followed the distilled versions that were provided by the institutes. Those are a must do, as we saw questions from SEBI circular even in phase 2 of the examination. So one should not limit just to RBI circulars, but also cover what other regulatory bodies are doing and the development in fields like insurance, pension, etc. Even those kinds of things.
Okay, wonderful. So because you've cleared, phase one of both year I'm assuming 2023 as well as in 2024, isn't it? So how
Yeah.
did you, what kind of differences you see in terms of nature of paper, and what was your strategy? Is your strategy was same across both the year, or were there some tweaking that you did this year also?
So, as far as my examination is concerned, I relied on QRE to get me very close to the overall cutoff, so that I just needed a decent enough score in GA as a fail-safe and also to clear the sectional cutoff. So, as far as QRE and QRE is concerned, the strategy was more or less the same. I just refined my concepts with some tricks and calculation hacks, etc. in my this attempt, 2024 attempt, and some conceptual points that I had not covered in 2023. As far as GA was concerned, it was a bit unconventional, I would say, especially between different shifts. So in my shift, the paper was difficult, or it was said to be difficult, as per the reactions given by various students. So I just saw the paper and decided that I'll attempt those questions which I'm reasonably confident of. There were some unconventional questions as well, like Aurora, Australia is this, and all those kinds of concepts that also crept in this time. So finance was actually had more of a weightage this time than the miscellaneous current affairs type questions that were prevalent last year. So all in all, this year GA was a bit unconventional, but since that was not my primary strength, so I just limited myself to solving as many questions as I could. And also I practiced speed reading a lot, so that I could actually cover the entire paper of GA, because you never know in which part of the question paper favorable questions are there as far as your strengths are concerned. So that is an important skill that one should invest in.
So now we will move towards phase two. Okay, so phase two have these ESI, FM, as well as normal English descriptive. So first, if we have to stick to ESI, so especially with respect to objective, how did you approach the overall subject? Because anyways, I feel this ESI have much more diverse areas to cover, and that too mostly unrelated. Economy you have social structure also, and you have international also. So how did you approach it?
I actually continued my preparation for phase 1 GA into the ESI section of phase 2. So PIB news, government schemes, reports, those I thoroughly covered for phase 2. I also made short notes out of all important reports, like 1 or 2 page short notes that I could quickly revise before the exam and go. And as you know, there was a question on world development report objective part of the ESI paper. So I was able to solve those questions. And all in all, my strategy was more of continuity as far as ESI objective was concerned, rather than any change from phase 1.
Okay. So now if we move towards finance objective, so what areas you particularly focused more upon as compared to, other areas?
Yeah, so finance was something that was a particularly weak spot for me because I come
Okay.
from an engineering background. So I just read all the RBI and SEBI circulars that I was already doing. Apart
Mm-hmm.
from that, I covered important sections from finance static, which were recurring as far as previous year questions were concerned. For example, corporate governance, CSR, banking related concepts, the different kinds of monetary policy tools that RBI was using for monetary policy control. And all those topics I did to some depth. Apart from that, I relied more on management section in FM paper to get me through than finance.
So now we'll shift towards descriptive. So first we'll just briefly talk about how English descriptive. English descriptive, there's essay, there's Prezi, and then there's, RC is also there. So how did you approach English descriptive in terms of preparation? And what factors did you keep in mind while attempting the paper? So these two things we'll discuss.
Yeah, so let me deal with the latter section first. So while
Okay.
attempting the paper, I always used to prefer completion over perfection. So that
Okay.
meant that I always started with RC, then went to
Mm-hmm.
Prezi, and finally the essay, because I was
Okay.
reasonably confident that I would be able to finish the same essay in 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And the only thing that would be different is the quality and the word limit. So
Mm-hmm.
completion is key as far as English is concerned. So that was my strategy for English. Apart from that, I practiced a lot of mock tests in English. Some of them I wrote completely, and in other sections I just brainstormed on the essay part, etc., and saw whether I was able to generate enough content to write and think of a good introduction and conclusion. I also like searched online for probable essay topics, and then for the examination, and used ChatGPT to generate ideal intro and conclusion of those topics, which then I could internalize and keep in handy for major kind of sections as far as essay is concerned. For example, we know that climate change is an important topic. Startup, entrepreneurship, these topics have been repeating in previous year questions as well. There is one essay from ESI, so that could be tackled with in an integrated manner with ESI descriptive section. So those are some of the topics that one can prepare, but one needs to be able to think on his feet and brainstorm ideas to write in the essay paper. And RC and Prezi pretty much follow a methodical prescription as far as writing them is concerned. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't think there's much to say here apart from doing a lot of practice for those parts.
Okay. So what about, were you careful with respect to spelling, grammar, and punctuation mistakes? What are your thoughts about it? That how, uh, we should avoid these things and what we can do in this regard?
Yeah, one should definitely try and avoid these things as much as possible. Since I already had a habit of reading and writing since my college days, these were not much of a problem for me. Uh, but I have heard that other people use softwares like Grammarly or even
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT to actually correct their spellings, etc., and get feedback in terms of improving their structure and the precision of their writing.
Okay. So, in your essay, you only used paragraph format or you used point-wise format over there?
No, only paragraph format in essay.
Okay. Now we'll move towards ESI and FM descriptive. So in terms of preparation, how did you approach these two sections?
Yeah. So for ESI, I already had studied Vivek Singh sir's book on Indian economy. So
Mm-hmm.
that gave me a pretty good foundation as far as writing on any ESI question is concerned. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I would be able to write a reasonably good answer on any ESI static topic. So this time I actually focused on refinement. So what I did was that I sat with the PYQs, current affairs, and the syllabus, and actually derived 50 topics
Mm-hmm.
on which questions were much like more probable, in my opinion. And I researched those topics thoroughly using different sources online, chat gpt, etc. And I made two or three pages of notes on those topics, which included definitions, uh, data points, government initiatives, challenges, prospects, way forward, etc., so that I would be able to write any answer which based on those topics, or even something that peripherally covered that topic. So by covering these 50-55 topics, I was actually preparing for 300 probable questions in the exam. And sure enough,
Mm-hmm.
in the ESI section, 3 out of the 4 descriptive questions that I wrote, I had prepared them in some form or the other. So the question on
Okay, okay.
youth unemployment,
Yes, yes.
national industrial corridor, that was part of my infrastructure note. There
Mm-hmm.
was another question on conflict of sustainability and conflicts, something on that nature. I had actually
Mm-hmm.
prepared unique examples, like how the drying of the Tigris River was fueling extremism in the Middle East. So those kinds of examples I had already prepared. So I was able to write those questions without much brainstorming in the ESI part.
Okay. And what about finance and management, specifically in management, because most of the questions you already know, already you can think that they can arrive because mostly it's tech only. And with respect to finance, there is a tendency of current and static, both mixed type of questions can come. So was it the similar thing or anything extra did you do in FL?
Actually, as I already mentioned, finance was my weak spot as far as the FM paper goes. So I decided to do the heavy lifting through management. So
Okay.
I actually planned to write 3 out of the 4 questions of descriptive from management section only. So
Mm-hmm.
that meant that attempting all the management questions that came. So for this, I actually prepared very vigorously. I covered the whole management syllabus from a YouTube channel, and then supplemented it with notes from a coaching institute. After that, I also researched on important topics like motivation, leadership, to actually get quotes, examples, or current affairs kind of information that could be inserted coherently into those answers to make them more impressive. Something
Mm-hmm.
that I feel is that management actually seems kind of obvious when you study the subject, because everything is like pretty well known to us, and there is no technical stuff related to understanding those subjects. But actually one should not assume that this would make answer writing easy, because in answer writing you need to coherently articulate a lot of points, and you need some authors, some thinkers, examples, quotes, etc., to make your answer stand out, because everybody would be able to write an answer on a management topic. So you actually need to invest time in the major topics of management and create unique content which will help you get an edge as far as answer writing is concerned.
So, when you were talking about brainstorming, and this is the most major issue that students also face because not every question can be predicted. You know, there might be and there will be, the one or two questions that nobody knows, but still you have to do it. So, do you wish to share your strategy with respect to how do you brainstorm such questions so that at least you can write 400 or, at least 500 words answer over there?
Yeah, for me, it was finance. This time, I had to write a question on growth versus value investing, and I
Okay.
knew almost nothing about that topic. So, based on the name itself, I tried to guess what would be the parameters of both. and then I use some of my accounting knowledge like P by E ratio, etc., to create an answer. So the first thing is during your revision sessions, what you need to do is follow something called active recall, in which you don't just read your notes again and again, but just think about a topic and then try to generate different dimensions of the topic, either by writing or even mentally through flowcharts, etc. So right from the revision stage itself, it would create a framework in your mind about how to generate points related to different topics and think structurally and in a methodical format to actually generate different dimensions. As you know, multidimensionality is the name of the game as far as answer writing is concerned. So that is very, very important. And in the examination also, of course, the questions that one can write directly or without wasting time. But other questions one needs to brainstorm, and there are lots of techniques. There is something called pestle analysis, political, economic, social,
Yes.
those kind of dimension. One can also do stakeholder analysis of any topic. For example, in value versus growth investing, we can think from the point of view of the investor. We can think from the point of view of financial markets, from the point of view of policy making and the regulator, and generate points for each of those verticals. So these are some of the broad frameworks that one needs to keep in mind while writing. Also, something that I personally used as a thumb rule was the question that I was quite sure of or had a lot of content for, I would write in point-wise formats so as to include maximum information in the word limit. But the questions that I was brainstorming or generating, I would generally write in the paragraph format so that each idea could be expanded and fleshed out so as to appear more comprehensive than it actually the answer is. So that is
Okay.
something that I followed in the examination as well.
No, this is very good that you've told all these areas. This will definitely help, students. At least it will remove the fear that they have in mind. At least there is a way out via which you can do and, generate more ideas. So now, since phase two is done, we'll focus on phase three, which is interview, which is also, in my opinion, the most crucial part, especially since the marks have been increased from 50 to 75. Now it has become a deciding factor with respect to your selection. If you do not score good, you'll not get selected despite scoring very good in phase two. So how did you approach this stage in terms of preparation?
So actually, I had I had very less time for interview preparations this time. I barely got 2 weeks. So what I did was I decided that I will read two newspapers, one national
Mm-hmm.
newspaper and one financial newspaper, and try to gather as many different points and perspectives of different burning issues. Apart from that, I researched every part of my biodata and generated like 10 questions from each of the points that I had actually mentioned in my biodata form, so that those questions could be answered in a more comfortable manner. Apart from that, I was already comfortable in speaking because I did a lot of debating in college. So that was not an issue for me. But I attempted 3 mock interviews and tried to improve upon every next one by watching the recording again and again and trying to find out my faults. So yeah, that's all as far as my interview preparation goes.
Okay. So you want to share your experience in RBI interview. How was your interview and on what lines did the interview go about?
Yeah, so my interview actually went on for more than 40 minutes because
Okay, okay.
I was only one of the 4 candidates that day in Kolkata, and I was also the first one. So the interview actually covered everything under the sun. I was asked questions from economy and finance related
Mm-hmm.
to cryptocurrency, CBDC, what different countries are doing in terms of its regulation, about monetary policy committee. As you know, there was a growth slowdown in the second quarter of
Yes.
5.4%
Mm-hmm.
during in the September quarter, if I
Yes,
remember
yes, yes,
correctly.
yes,
So
yes.
I was asked what yeah, so I was asked what would I do if I was part of the monetary policy committee. Then I was asked about some recent developments like high frequency indicators of the economy, the debate that was raging around CPI and whether the metrics needed to be changed because food inflation was actually driving up the inflation significantly.
Yeah.
So those are some of the questions. Apart from that, since the chairman sir actually shared my discipline, chemical engineering, so
Okay.
I was asked pretty intensely on chemical engineering. I was asked to write differential equations of second order reaction, like
Okay.
plug flow reactors and those kinds of topics. And I
Okay.
was slightly thrown off balance because of it, because I did not expect it. And I somehow gathered my strength and then replied as best as I could. And apart from that, I was asked the routine HR questions that is expected of an engineer, like why did I made a switch from engineering to finance, and why did I want to join RBI, things of that nature. And uh, during the discussion, climate change came up suddenly, and then the whole discussion also veered a lot towards climate change, its impact on central banking, about climate science, its history, especially because I'm a chemical engineer. So it's history from a chemical engineering point of view about Mauna Loa, observatory, Keeling curve, all those kinds of stuff. So yeah, all in all, it was a pretty comprehensive interview. I was intimidated at times, but overall it went well, and I got 65 out of 75 marks. So I think it is
Okay.
a pretty
Wonderful.
good one, more
Wonderful. It's
than I
very, very good
expected.
marks. Very good marks. So basically, you mentioned about, they also tried to, test your temperament over there. And it happens with the candidates, especially, there are various candidates. For example, at the start only, they are not able to answer one or two questions. But if they maintain their composure and if they are able to answer, further questions, they get good marks. So, anything you would like to share that how did you maintain your composure over there and what was going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, so one thing that I would advise all the aspirants is that expect some bouncers in the interview. Like the panel sitting over there is way more experienced and knowledgeable than you in almost every field. So they will find some questions that you will not be able to answer. But you need to maintain your composure so as to answer those questions which are answerable by you, and answer them to their satisfaction to get good marks. And one thing that I learned the hard way is to research your education or area of like for working professionals, it's their area of work very, very thoroughly, because I never expected to find a chemical engineer there sitting in the panel who grilled me so hard on chemical engineering concepts. So you never know that who among them is an expert in your field, and you can land up in quite some trouble. And lastly, I would say that I think it is often repeated that interview is a test of personality. While that
Mhm.
is true, but having knowledge over a lot of things actually doesn't hurt. So through your knowledge, you can showcase your personality in being able to think on your feet, answer follow-up questions. So having a knowledge and reading up generally on various issues, like for example, climate change, it's a burning topic for every stage of the examination. So you should have some ready-made points in your mind to showcase its impact on the banking sector, on exports, on economy, etc. So these points you should have in mind to ace the interview.
Yes, definitely. You said it very correct. Because I feel knowledge forms the base of your personality. Without knowledge, you'll not be able to communicate different ideas. You'll not be able to analyze, and you'll not be able to debate. So knowledge definitely forms a part of your personality. In my opinion, it's the base at which you can further showcase explicitly that what's your personality, good personality is. Wonderful. So now that
Definitely.
we've already covered all the areas, so just few areas which generally aspirants, tends to do. For example, since this is the age of social media and it's the age of reels and shorts, so how did you, kept yourself away from all these and start, focus on this? Any strategy you would want to share, students?
So like I used some of the productivity apps like Forest apps, which Forest app that actually helps you focus on your work without distraction. I uninstalled all like Instagram, Facebook, etc. I used to scroll through Twitter, like X, some of the times, especially before sleep, to catch up on the latest developments. Apart from that, I would say I have been pretty disciplined all throughout my life, so it was not much of a problem for me. But
Mm-hmm.
one, of course, needs to be mindful of how the time is utilized, especially the short preparation span of 6 to 7 months. One needs to stay away from this distraction as much as possible.
Yes, definitely. And one more issue that we face that aspirants usually do mistakes. They have this sense of fear of missing out, and then they try to cover each and every material available on the market. So, what is your take on avoiding multiple sources and just revising? Because it's a factual exam, you need to do multiple revisions, then only you will be able to recall. So, what's your take on it?
Definitely. I think in military doctrine, it's often said that cover as much ground as you can hold. So the same actually holds for preparations, because there is no use of studying multiple materials and then not being able to reproduce it in terms of descriptive question, or not being able to recall in MCQ. So the key is always focusing on limited material and trying to digest it all. So active recall is something that one can do in this regard. Like instead of reading through the notes again and again, trying to recall and trying to test yourself through MCQ is a better strategy. And keep your sources limited. For example, my whole principle is never follow any primary source. Always read crisp, distilled content, which you guys even provide very, very well. Your content is very crisp, from what I have heard and seen. So that is the key to success in these examinations, because firstly, you don't need to study and remember every detail out there, and secondly, it's more important to be able to use the limited data points and facts that you remember in the examination, than actually knowing it all and not being able to use it to the fullest extent.
So, since your journey is anyways inspiring and it's an inspiration to a lot of students, but anything you would want to share or any advice you would want to give to the whole aspirants community, with which at least they'll feel motivated and not feel demotivated, especially after the results, and they will still believe they can, conquer in this regard.
Yeah, so like something that I must say is that one should pick his battles very carefully. For example, I also appeared for NABARD and I was not able
Okay.
to clear the examination because I did not have those strength or invested in studying those subjects. So actually pick your battles carefully, target like 1 or 2 examination, like be methodical, decide your sources, analyze the PYQs, set your targets, and then stick to the plan that you actually make for the duration of the examination. That is the key to success. Consistency and perseverance is, of course, something that I can never stress enough of. Yeah, apart from that, I think discipline is something that would take you a great leap forward, rather than motivation and all those kinds of ephemeral feelings that you can get one day, but you will eventually lose it over a couple of days. So be consistent, be focused, be disciplined. That is the key to success.
Thank you, Karan. So it was lovely, talking with you. And I wish to again, CGB team also wish to again congratulate you for your achievements. And thank you so much for sharing your journey and your learnings to the aspirants. I do believe that this will definitely help future aspirants community. Thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.